name is right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, again, we'll give that a quick change before the thousands of people start flooding in here.
Yeah. I don't know. Hang on.
Do I need to end the broadcast?
There we go.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. Whew. All right. Welcome to a Week 16 edition of the RotoWire Sports Gambling Podcast, sponsored, of course, by BetMGM. Make sure you're using our promo code BETROTO, BETROTO, over at BetMGM.com or on the BetMGM app if you're placing any NFL wagers this weekend. John McKechnie, you're out in Maryland. I'm still here in snowy, frigid, miserable Wisconsin, but a huge weekend of football coming at us. We're recording this one a little earlier due to the holiday travel. So we're recording Thursday around 11 a.m. Central. Big game tonight. We will not talk about it just due to the timing. You know, by the time you're hearing this, there'll be just hours before the game of the century, Jets-Jags. And John, I take no pleasure in doing this, but for the visual audience, those watching along on YouTube, it's time to put the Jags jersey on.
Let's go. Absolutely huge moment, folks.
It's a little tight. Yep. So for those listening on audio, this is a Jalen Ramsey Jaguars jersey. It's a Blake Bortles era. The ones that had like a lot going on, like different sleeve colors. This is when the helmets were kind of two colored. It's got the Jags like kind of military patch on the front of the jersey. I actually love these jerseys, and their new ones are fine, but I don't really think they needed to switch for like the fourth time in a decade.
Yeah, pick your spots, as it were. And can a leopard change its spots? Can a jaguar change its spots? Many are wondering.
Who's to say?
But I mean, that's a legit looking jersey there, friend. I mean, are we talking stitched and everything?
We're talking stitched and everything. Oh yeah, these are stitched. Everything's stitched. I actually, I'm going to say it. Got this from China. Just a great product. Cost me less than $20. I can't endorse it enough. But anyway, we don't want to talk too much Jags Jets. I was telling you, I'm a little concerned that line continues to move in favor of the Jets. It's not a must win for the Jags. Would be nice to win to kind of give yourself a little bit of a cushion, but really it's going to come down to Week 18, Jags Titans, and we will absolutely cross that bridge when we get there, John. But let's turn our attention to Week 16. We once again have 15 games to rifle through, of course, excluding that Thursday night game. Really, I'm going to use the W word, kind of a wacky week. You know, a ton of low totals on the board. I think Bucks Cardinals actually bumped back over 40. So that leaves us, I believe, with 7 games now, just 7 with a total under 40. We were talking on the XM show with Scott Pianowski and Tom Kesnick last night. And, you know, both of those guys essentially said, like, this is one of the worst fantasy weeks possible. And, you know, for gambling, it's a little bit easier to parse. But, the weather is a big factor here. And not only that, but we have a lot of bad quarterback on bad quarterback matchups, bad team on bad team, bad offense on bad offense. It's going to be fun to watch, but I think visually that there might be some ugly games.
Yes, no, and I'm going to be front and center for one of said ugly games. I believe the total in this one for the Ravens Falcons checking in at 37 and a half. So
my condolences.
I know it's in August when it was decided that we were going to go to the game, it was like nice, like Christmas Eve, like that's going to be a lot of fun. Apparently it's going to be the second coldest kickoff in Baltimore Ravens history. So your boy's going to need to pay a visit to REI or something to procure some Long Johns.
Do you guys have Gander Mountains out there? Maybe that's just a Wisconsin thing.
I think it's just a Wisconsin thing. So yeah, pretty much it's an REI town here in Bethesda, Maryland. But might need to get like one of those skull wraps to put under the Santa hat because I got to wear the Santa hat. 'Tis the season and everything. But that's going to be not. It's one of those games that nothing really takes the cake from Saints Browns, but oof. Man. Yeah, that we got some funk this week, and I'm going to be just right there in it.
I actually do have one of those Under Armour skull caps, I believe they're called, laying around from my middle school football days. If you want to borrow that, I could maybe express ship it out to you, and hopefully it arrives by Saturday. But you said it, man. It's going to be ugly. We still don't really know what the quarterback situation is in Baltimore. Let's start with that game. I mean, it's listed as the first game on Saturday. J.K. Dobbins off the injury report. Tyler Huntley was actually added to the injury report, limited participant on Wednesday due to some tendonitis in the shoulder. It doesn't seem like that's going to be a major issue, but obviously we're really watching closely the status of Lamar Jackson, and we may get an update during this pod. That would be ideal. But did not practice Tuesday, did not practice Wednesday. What's interesting is we're seeing the Ravens as 7-point favorites at BetMGM. To me, that line implies that the belief is that Lamar's going to be able to play. Is that what that says to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that a Tyler Huntley led team or an Anthony Brown led team would be favored by a touchdown against anybody, let alone the Falcons. So I wouldn't be surprised if this comes down. I with 2 days worth of no practice for Lamar, obviously coming off of a couple of absences already, I feel very iffy about his status going into this one. And if it sticks at this number, or I would go ahead and try to get the Falcons at this number right now before things move in regards to Lamar Jackson. But if Lamar plays, even then, I'm a little bit skeptical. I did take the Ravens in my column, but, wrote that on Tuesday. And, as the week has progressed, I'm feeling worse and worse about the Ravens' chances of doing that. And obviously, I believe the Ravens have been the worst team against the spread at home this year. I don't think they've covered a single spread at the Big Crab Cake this year. Pretty poor showing for, in front of the home crowd there in Baltimore. But it's just kind of how it's been thus far this year. The Falcons, obviously, they aren't without their own issues. But if this is a Tyler Huntley game, then I think that we're looking at just kind of a classic rock fight, really, more than anything.
0-5-1 are the Baltimore Ravens ATS at home this season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the only other team that has not covered at home. So you're right about that. We'll kind of go with our normal method of breaking down the rest of these games. We'll look at some lines that are maybe a little too high, a little too low. We could go that way with totals as well. I mean, it's pretty hard to make a case for why some of these totals should be any higher. I'll tell you that. But are there any lines to you as you look at the board at BetMGM that just look a little too high one way or the other?
So the ones that stood out to me, leading things off, was the Bills going up against the Bears. Obviously, that's one of the bigger numbers on the board this week, with the Bills favored by 9.5. It looks like right now at BetMGM. That just feels a little bit too rich for my blood. I feel like that the back door is wide open for Justin Fields and company to cover this spread. I think that, we saw it last week. The Bears didn't play a great game, but in the end, they were safely within that number, but, when it was all said and done. So I see something similar. I know that the Bills, I thought that the Dolphins really were impressive relative to, I think, everyone's collective expectations that they were going to get steamrolled last Saturday. I feel like the Bills on the road here, I just have trouble trusting them to cover 10 points in this setup here.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, we're talking Kansas City, they've kind of hurt me 2 weeks in a row. I don't know where to go with the Chiefs at this point. They're the team that I just kind of fall back on them being really good and having Patrick Mahomes, and I'm kind of at a loss right now.
So, totally fair. Last week's game, pretty inexcusable. There have been a couple times this year where they've had the big number in front of them. I will say, I think that the Seahawks are ripe for another just kind of like the correction monster has come for them, and it's going to continue this week. So with that in mind, I do think that the Chiefs go ahead and cover this spread. But it's definitely not like a slam dunk or anything. But I think that Seattle, they were playing way above expectations for such a large portion of the season. And I think that it's coming crashing down this stage of the season. I think we're going to continue to see Geno Smith maybe play his way out of the job or play his way in such a fashion that the Seahawks have to consider, a quarterback with one of their early draft picks, that type of thing. Whereas in October is like, wait a second, like they might have a guy for next year and, they can just kind of figure it out.
Right.
But I'm thinking no here. I'm on the Chiefs, but obviously that's a big number. What did you make of let's see, the Niners going up against the Commanders, like 7.5? Obviously the Commanders did not play well Sunday night, and the 49ers are really clicking right now, and they'll be well rested relative to Washington in this setup, having just played last Thursday. but I feel like it's almost too easy to pick the Niners in this one, and therefore
Yeah.
I feel a little bit.
Yeah, so one final note on Seattle, by the way. Kenneth Walker, no practice on Thursday, not trending toward playing at this point. That's big. Could be a DJ Dallas, Travis Homer situation, and obviously no Tyler Lockett as well. Noah Fant, Marquise Goodwin, also out of practice. So things certainly moving in favor of the Chiefs there. And to close the book on that, I once again, I'm going to take the plunge with the Chiefs. Commanders Niners is interesting. This number has held firm at 7 all week. There's been a fair amount of movement elsewhere around the league. I mean, like you said, it does feel a little too easy, and I would love for this to be at 6.5. If it went up at all, I think I would take Washington. The question to me is, after losing to the Giants and kind of now being on the outside looking in to the NFC playoff picture, like how does Washington bounce back? Like are they devastated by that home loss? That was a game they were favored in. I liked Washington to win outright. We were on the Giants to cover, so that was nice, but I thought Washington would be in a really good spot. And we talked about the winner of that Giants-Washington game has the advantage the rest of the way. So how do they bounce back? I mean, there's some comments from Ron Rivera this week that maybe they go back to Carson Wentz. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement of what they saw out of Taylor Heineke. But to me, it's a really rough spot on paper for Washington. So I guess I'm a little surprised that this line maybe hasn't moved just a bit more. Commanders having to go all the way across the country to the Niners here. I mean, I think we're kind of waiting for like the Brock Purdy bubble to burst in some ways. And I'm not saying he's just going to like careen down and be this terrible quarterback, but to you, is what he's done the last few weeks completely sustainable? Because the more I've dug into the numbers and kind of gone back and watched a lot of his throws, like I wouldn't say it's unsustainable, but I mean, he's playing really, really well. And I think he's schemed extremely well. This is a better defense than the Seattle defense they went up against last week, but I'm not really sure it matters right now. I mean, the 49ers feel like they're coming into each game with just an extreme amount of confidence. So I'm on the Niners in this game. I wouldn't say I feel great about it.
Yeah. So when it comes to Purdy, it just feels like he's like the ultimate Shanahan. I can make this work with anybody. I can turn chicken, what, into chicken salad. It does feel that way. But Purdy, we live in a world where just a couple of years ago, Purdy was talked about as a potential day 1 or day 2 draft pick. Did not have a particularly good senior season, and therefore he was Mr. Irrelevant. But he's a guy who's got a lot of football under his belt, despite being a rookie. Being a 4-year starter at Iowa State, Power 5 school. So I think at the very least, like the system is such that like it works with his skill set extremely well. Like I thought that was a really nice match. But obviously coming, on draft day, you figure like, okay, like he's sitting behind Trey Lance. He's, Jimmy G's probably still going to be kicking around. So obviously we didn't expect him to see the field this year or really be part of the Niners plans or, their Super Bowl aspirations, let alone. But I think what he's doing is sustainable just because, even without Deebo Samuel, just because it's designed so well to suit his skill set. They're not asking him to air it out, like as far as like putting the ball deep down the field. They've kind of unlocked George Kittle a little bit in Deebo's absence, and I think that's been a really nice little development. A supplemental piece of that offense. McCaffrey looks amazing right now, so everything's clicking, and it's hard to really doubt Brock Purdy. I know people want to almost like make the Tom Brady comp. Obviously, we're not there yet or anything, but as far as being able to keep things afloat despite some tough situations, some tough conditions for San Francisco, I think Purdy's well suited to do it.
Yeah, I go back to that touchdown, the first one to George Kittle last week on Thursday, the like double fake to each side, and then Kittle just leaks out wide open. I mean, there are very few teams that are scheming plays like that, especially for a 7th round rookie, trusting him in those situations. And it's just, you just tip your cap to the coaching staff in those situations. So yeah, the more we talk about this, like the one thing that kind of worries me when the 49ers have a big number is they're not really a team that's all that interested in blowing teams out. And we saw it against Seattle. They got that lead and they're more than comfortable sitting on it, and that's kind of been a hallmark of Kyle Shanahan teams is like when they get up and they feel comfortable, they're not exactly a pour it on type of team, unless it kind of comes by default. They've had some games where like the tackling, I think it was the Arizona game in Mexico, where it's like Arizona just gave up. I don't really think the 49ers were trying to blow them out necessarily, but they had no choice. And I don't think Washington's that type of team. Like the implied score in this game is like 22-15 23-16, something like that. This is one that I could just totally see pushing.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Again, with it being at 7, that feels we're at push risk, push watch.
Yeah, we're definitely at a big push watch here. I want to ask you about the Bucks, who are up to 7.5-point favorites. They are on the road at Arizona. In theory, this is like not a great spot. Long travel. Obviously, it's not a fantastic home field advantage for Arizona. You could argue there's no home field advantage whatsoever. I mean, Tampa Bay has been one of the worst ATS teams all year. I think they've only covered twice. They continue to be favored. They've only been dogs 2 times this year. One of those, of course, was last week. I understand it. Obviously, no Kyler Murray, no Colt McCoy. It's going to be Trace McSorley, I assume. I would not be surprised if we see some David Blau in this game as well. If you're talking fantasy, like I would not be comfortable picking up McSorley because I don't know if he finishes this game. He looked awful last week against Denver. But on the flip side, 7.5. I mean, that is a big number to trust this Bucks offense with. They probably played maybe their best first half of the year last week against Cincy, and then came out with turnovers or punts on 5 straight drives to begin the second half. So as much as I'm down on Arizona, I want to be very clear. I have no respect for the Arizona Cardinals, but I don't have much respect for Tampa either. So this one is actually trickier to me than it probably should be.
Exactly. Like I hate trusting Tampa Bay with this type of number, especially with it being on the road. But as someone who, oddly enough, has seen a lot of Trace McSorley in my day, I think COVID year he might have started a game or at least played a decent chunk for Baltimore, actually. So I've seen it. And it's not good, man. It's
not good.
In fact, it's very bad. So I think that the Cardinals are absolutely on shutout watch, and therefore I think that the Bucks can score 10 points, and I think that honestly might be enough for them to cover this spread. Like it's going to be so bad with McSorley. He's got like lacrosse athleticism, right. So that's nice if you're playing like pickup basketball, but an NFL game, like he's not going to be able to light it up. He's not like those runs, those lanes that he thinks are open for him, they're going to close up rather quickly and he's going to get lit up. So yeah, I'm with you. I would not be surprised to see David Blau in this one, either by injury or poor performance from McSorley. And, as gross as it is, I do like Tampa in this spot.
It's hard not to, right? I mean, it's like, how do you possibly like even build a case for the Cardinals other than just saying like Tampa Bay is not that good. And that's not fantastic analysis. I understand that, but yeah, this just feels like a bone is being thrown from the heavens to Tampa Bay, because I think if Kyler Murray, was playing in this game, or even Colt McCoy, I think this could be a game that the Bucks could honestly lose straight up. They have proven that they can lose to anybody on any week. So I think if you're New Orleans, Carolina, Atlanta, you're a little peeved at the situation that Tampa Bay is kind of being gifted here. But yeah, it's hard for me to see Tampa Bay losing this game straight up. And I'm with you. I'm going to kind of have to swallow the 7.5. I think we got it at like 5.5 or 6 in staff picks at least. But yeah, that's going to be a gross one. That's for sure. And that is our Sunday night game, by the way.
I know.
So, enjoy that one. That's the, we're going to be coming in hot off of Broncos Rams in the afternoon window. And then we're treated to Bucks Cardinals to finish out Christmas night.
Yeah, I think the ratings gods are just hoping that everyone has tuned to the TV and before they like fall asleep in front of the TV, and just keep the TV on for that, because otherwise, like, there's not a whole lot of reason to be tuned in particularly intently on this one. It's going to be nice little background fodder more than anything.
That might be one where I flip over to the late NBA game. I think, maybe have Bucks Cardinals on flashback. If you got 2 TVs, if you're living, in the life of luxury, then maybe you can watch both. But not going to be fun, that's for sure. How about the Buffalo Bills? 8.5-point favorites on the road at Chicago. Feels like the Bears have been in these situations frequently of late. They covered last week. I made the Vikings my best bet. We know that went up in smoke. They win the game. They don't cover. We'll get to that later. But in staff picks, I went with Philly. And to be totally honest, John, I've made a lot of bad picks this year. I'm not going to run from that. I think anybody who's been following my picks knows that. Best bets have not gone well. I feel like that was the right pick. I mean, Jalen Hurts throws 2 picks in the first half. Jake Elliott misses a 38-yard field goal, which capped off a 19-play drive. Miles Sanders just has like an unforced fumble deep in his own territory. That leads directly to a Bears touchdown 2 plays later. And the Eagles still led by double digits with under 3 minutes left in this game, and they had multiple miscommunications, just blown coverages that allowed Chicago to tack on a late touchdown. And then, of course, Philly, gets a first down and they go into shutdown mode, kind of similar to what we saw from Green Bay, who had a very frustrating end to that game against the Rams if you were on the over. So that was, I'm chalking that up to a personal bad beat. But now, not only are the Bills kind of in that zone where every week you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, and they kind of continue to put up these wins, but these less than convincing wins. So is 8.5 too much on the road?
I would say it is. I think that I just am so in on Justin Fields right now that, like, even if the rest of the team is falling apart around him, which for the most part it honestly is, I still think that he's someone that keeps the Bears afloat. And like you said, the Bills stacking wins, but they're not looking like world beaters right now. I think that they're just kind of like ready for January to start because, I mean, they have one goal in mind, of course, and that's the Super Bowl. So they're just kind of playing out the string here a little bit. That, they got pushed around a good bit. That I thought that they were beneficiaries of some nice home cooking as far as the officiating went last week against the Dolphins. I don't like them to cover by this much on the road in Chicago. That leaves open a lot of liability, especially when you have someone like Justin Fields to worry about, where he can, on one drive, get the back door right there for you. So I'm not on the Bills this week. I will take the Bears as big home dogs yet again.
Yep, I'm on Chicago as well. I never feel good about these situations. You're kind of just waiting for. It's kind of the same thing we talked about with KC. It's like, all right, how many times can they really fall flat here? And you're kind of waiting for that explosion game. But with Buffalo, I mean, it's literally 8 straight weeks we've been waiting for this. They are 1-6-1 ATS in their last 8 games. I got a couple more notes here. Teams with a 65% win percentage or better versus teams with a 25% win percentage or lower since 2016. 71, 104, and 3 ATS. Since 2020, those teams are covering at only a 34.5% clip. So even if you're off Chicago and you think this is a team that has nothing outside of Fields, like, the numbers are in favor of the Bears in this situation. And this is one of over half the games on the slate where you have to look at the weather. And kickoff forecast on Saturday in Chicago, 7 degrees. It's going to feel like well below zero, 22 mile per hour winds. Not going to be dealing with any snow, but like Soldier Field late in the season is always just a gross environment. The grass is like brownish gray. You're always wondering, it's like, is this even safe to play on? So I think this could be a very low scoring game. We're seeing the total right now down at 40.5. That has to be the lowest by far in any Bills game this season. And look, I don't see the Bills losing this game, but I also don't see them just completely blowing Chicago out. I don't know if it's possible to, put up a bunch of points in these conditions.
Right. I mean, would it be too easy to make the parallel to week 1 with the 49ers going into Chicago? I mean, obviously it was warm, but, same level of just kind of miserable conditions there. So, and oddly enough, like, I know that Josh Allen has like the strongest arm in the league. So wind doesn't theoretically affect him as much as it does others. But at a certain point, the ball is going to be rock hard. It's going to be slippery. And, we're talking about, again, 22 mile an hour winds whipping. And are the Bills able to just kind of adjust on the fly and really just kind of pound the rock with Singletary and James Cook? Like, I question that. I don't think that either of those guys are those workhorse type of dudes. So, I mean, are they going to really expose Allen to a bunch of designed runs? This just doesn't feel like the type of setup that particularly suits Buffalo to really like run their offense the way that they like to. So with that in mind, also, them being a little bit out of their element, off their game, I talked myself into being even more confident in Chicago to cover this, not to win, but to cover.
Yeah. I mean, 9 of the last 12 Bills games have gone under. To answer your question, I think they can pound the ball against Chicago, but I think that also plays into our low scoring narrative. That's going to lead to long drives. You're bleeding clock. You're not putting up 30 plus points. I could see this, being like a 20-13 type of win for the Buffalo Bills, where you just, you do the bare minimum, you get out, you get your victory, and you get home for Christmas. I think, like you said, you don't want to be exposing Josh Allen to potential, injury prone type of plays this late in the season in these conditions. Not only is the ball going to be rock hard, that's going to affect the kicking game, but the field is going to be, basically an ice rink as well. So, again, I don't see the Bills losing this game, but I think the Bears can just kind of do what they've done all season and find ways to keep these games close against really good teams.
And one last thing, when Josh Allen was coming out, everyone talked about how big the hands were. Why does he fumble so much?
Right. Well, that's the thing.
What's the deal?
These conditions, these are fumble prone conditions, and that's something. I mean, we saw it with Philly last week too. When it's cold, like I'm not necessarily worried about Josh Allen throwing the ball. Like you said, it's more, how many like I think you lead to a higher drop rate, a higher fumble rate, those variance type of plays that could keep an underdog in the game.
Yeah. So, I mean, Allen needs to take better care of the ball. Like I thought that, he was fortunate to get that, was a 2-point conversion last week, or was that a touchdown? Either way, the play at the goal line,
Yep.
There are a couple other just kind of sloppy. He's holding the ball out, and, defenses know to hunt for the ball like that. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a sort of game-changing fumble, at least as it comes to the spread here. So yeah, I'm definitely concerned about that. If I'm Buffalo, the ball security needs to be just hammered down this week. Otherwise, this one could be a lot more dicey than they would hope for.
Another game in the early window on Saturday, and I want to go to some spreads that are maybe a little too low, and I have this in the questionable territory for me. Have the Detroit Lions not earned our respect? Should they be more than 2.5-point favorites at Carolina?
I think so. I thought that their win last week was impressive. Obviously, I was Jets as my best bet last week, and at the same time, I really liked Carolina to cover against Pittsburgh, and they basically had a no-show. I thought that Carolina had kind of started to enter scrappy territory, and to lose like that to the Steelers, I'm pretty discouraged by that. So, with all that in mind, I feel like it's almost too easy again to go with the Lions here. But I mean, what's the case against them right now? I mean, Carolina is just frankly not a good team. They have some pieces on that defense, like Brian Burns, like JC Horn, all that. But I mean, offensively, kind of a mess in general, no real identity there to speak of. I think that the Lions are going to know that Carolina wants to run the ball. They're going to be able to kind of sell out to stop that, make Darnold beat them. So I do like the Lions a good bit, and I'm surprised to see it down at this number, especially after their ability to go into New York last week.
7 straight covers for the Detroit Lions. They have not covered 7 games in a season, not consecutively, since 2011. And the Jared Goff indoor-outdoor narrative, like, yes, he's better indoors. We know that. He's 25-13 career ATS indoors. Outdoors, though, it's not as disastrous maybe as you'd think. He's 30-32-2 outdoors ATS. So, I mean, it's not like he's only covering at like a 20% clip. I mean, it's basically 50-50. So I think that narrative is maybe a little bit overblown. Looking at the weather in Charlotte, about 25 degrees at kickoff, 10, 11 mile per hour winds. I mean, that's by this week's standards, that's really not that bad.
Have you seen the picture? I think it was from North Carolina when they had a snowstorm a couple of years ago. And there's just there's cars just like in the shoulder. One of them's on fire for some reason. Like I'm kind of I'm conjuring up those thoughts because as someone who lives in Atlanta, we're not used to that. Like 25 degrees south of Virginia, that becomes like biblical apocalyptic type of territory as far as the weather is concerned. So people are going to be icicles in the stands there, and yeah, it's gonna be tricky for the Panthers here. I definitely feel good about the Lions in this spot, and like you said, I think that Goff, I think just being a Cali bro and being as chill as he is, I think that a lot of people just kind of write him off as far as late season outdoors, tough conditions. But like you said, he's actually just about average there. He's not any worse than any other guy.
The case for Carolina is the Lions are still dead last in rush defense EPA. It's gotten better though. Yeah, I think they were so bad the first half of the season that it's still dragging down a lot of their season long numbers. I mean, the Lions defense is still not good. I'm not making that case, but it's not nearly as disastrous as it was earlier in the year. But I think the case for Carolina is this is one of those games, unlike last week, where you are able to keep it on the ground. You're able to control the clock. You're able to keep this a low scoring game. And if you're Carolina, you want this to be, a field goal type of game coming down to the end. And I also feel like there's, right or wrong, there's kind of this general narrative that's like the Lions can't keep this up. I think a lot of people thought they were going to get tripped up last week. I think if Mike White plays in that game, they probably do. Of course, they get the late touchdown, on 4th down to your backup tight end. That was a crushing play for the Jets defense. But I think that's factored in too. It's like, it almost feels like this has been too good to be true, this latest run for Detroit.
Yeah, I mean it's gotta come down eventually. I just don't think Carolina is the team to show them that reality. Another spread that seems a little bit low in my eyes. Cincinnati only giving 3 in New England. The Cincinnati, I believe, is 6-2 against the spread away from Paul Brown this year. Things looked really dicey there for a minute, obviously, against Tampa Bay. And then they showed up and showed everyone who they really are. And Bengals, I mean, I kind of like them to win it all right now. I mean, and I don't think that the Patriots are suited to stop them. And I wonder how much, mental hangover there's going to be from that last play last week. I mean, that was, to me, one of the most satisfying plays I've ever seen in my entire life. To see a Bill Belichick coach team screw up that bad, and just the visceral image of Chandler Jones just shoving Mac Jones into the ground, and then was it Jacoby Myers who said afterward, Mac was open. I thought he was going to make a play. That was one of the just an impeccable spin zone. Like one of the best spin zones you'll ever hear. And yeah, I mean, I just think that I like the Raiders in that one. That was a very, very fortunate cover from them last week. And they were only favored by like a point. But yeah, I think the Patriots are just a bad team right now. And I think that the Bengals are those dudes that you don't want to see right now. So I think that they're going to go into New England, take care of business.
I'm with you, man. The Bengals have been very profitable for us this year. I mean, they've covered 6 straight during this 6-game winning streak. Joe Burrow is 18-3 ATS in his last 21 starts. I mean, it's been convincing. When they win games, they win them big. And I think some people would maybe give a slight downgrade to Cincinnati for how they played in that first half. It was ugly. They were down 17-0. I feel better about Cincinnati coming out of that game. I think the way that they were able to rally back, they faced some adversity, especially these last 2 weeks during this win streak. There's a few games that have become dicey. I mean, that Pittsburgh game, they allowed 30 points. They still win, still cover. Against Cleveland, you lose your second and third receiver immediately, still grind out a win in that game. Tampa Bay, you're down 17-0. It looks like Tampa Bay is finally rolling on offense. And then you absolutely come out and stomp them. You put up 31 points in the second half. I mean, they've been the best second half team this year. They're allowing 8 points per game in the second half. And I think that's something that around midseason, we started to talk about, Cincinnati halftime adjustments, how great they've been. It just continues week after week after week. I think that coaching staff, especially on defense, maybe hasn't gotten enough credit.
No, I don't think so either. So whatever's going on at halftime, I don't know if they're doing like the Liver King, just like having some bone broth or something in the locker room. Whatever it is, man, it's cooking, it's working. And Joe Burrow, that's a scary, dangerous man right now. And Mac Jones, just like a little puppy by comparison. I think that this is going to be another sobering one for New England here. So I definitely love the Bengals by more than 3 in this one. And generally like that, it should make me feel a little bit like, should I need to second guess this one if I'm thinking the line is that far off? Not in this case. I feel like that the Bengals aren't getting quite enough respect in this particular spot. And then last one, what do you do with the Titans right now? Because they're 4-point favorites. The Texans have been the definition of, like scrappy these last couple of weeks against the Chiefs and the Cowboys respectively. Is this a good spot for Houston to cover? I have a hard time trusting Houston when the number's inside a touchdown. That's kind of where I come down on it.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously they've covered 2 in a row against 2 good teams, but you're talking, Mondo spreads there. I think 14 and like 17.5 against Dallas. Yeah. So yeah, this makes me a little nervous. It's down to 3.5 at BetMGM. I locked in the Texans plus 4.5 in staff picks. Still didn't feel good about it. That was before we had the official news on Ryan Tannehill. Obviously we've seen the Titans already take care of the Texans with Malik Willis at quarterback. So the blueprint is there. Derrick Henry should be able to run wild on this defense. I don't really know that there's a big difference between super hobbled Ryan Tannehill, which is basically what we've gotten for the last month, and Malik Willis. I think Tannehill was limited to the point that it really did change his effectiveness. So I don't really, obviously this puts the Titans in a tough spot. They're going to have to grind out this game to a degree that they'd probably not prefer to, but Yeah, I like Tennessee here. I think this could be a 17-13 type of game that you walk away pretty frustrated if you were on Houston. No Dameon Pierce is big, and still, I mean, this Titans defense, even with all the attrition in the secondary, I mean, to be able to hold the Chargers to 17 last week, that showed me a lot. I know they lost that game, but I thought that was going to be high scoring. I thought Tennessee was going to get thrown all over by Justin Herbert, and I think that defense showed up. And they, even if Ryan Tannehill doesn't play the rest of the year, I mean, they are still controlling their own destiny for that division. I don't think they're just packing it in here. They need to keep winning. They absolutely need to win this game to try to avoid going into that winner take all week 18 at Fred Taylor Field with Malik Willis likely starting that game.
It's yep. You threw me with the Fred Taylor field thing, but well, yeah, the Titans right now, they've obviously come back to earth a little bit. They got hot in October, but it's at the end of the day, it's still the Texans. It's not a big number to cover. I'll take Tennessee, but I'm holding my nose while doing so.
I like the under on 35.5.
There we go.
That's not a sentence that I say very often, but yeah, I mean, I think the counter to that is if you really think Derrick Henry, this could be one of those 180 yard 2-3 touchdown days. Like maybe that's what single-handedly pushes this one over. But as of right now, I think Houston knows what's coming, and the blueprint with Malik Willis has been we are handling him with the largest, thickest kid gloves possible. So I don't think Tennessee, they're if Derrick Henry carries the ball 31 times in this game, I think they're totally fine with that. I mean, I don't know what the prop is for Malik Willis pass attempts. We'd have to look into that, but that might be another under for me as well. One more game that I have in the potentially too low category, and part of this is because the line continues to move. Miami down to -4 against Green Bay. I know at some other unnamed inferior shops, it's down to 3.5. That line opened at 6 on Monday. That was after Green Bay, just walloped the Baker Mayfield Rams at Lambeau Field. I don't know what to do with this game. Obviously, Green Bay needs it, but Miami also needs it. I don't think Green Bay really showed me anything this past week. I think they were kind of a lock to win that game no matter what. It's big that A.J. Dillon, who left that game with a suspected concussion, has been cleared from protocols. He's going to be available. That's huge for Green Bay, the way he's playing. But this comes down to, do you trust the Green Bay defense against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? And for me, that is a no. So as of right now, with this number at 4, I really like Miami. If it was at 6, 6.5, then maybe you start to think about it. But in years past, this would be one of those spots where you're like, Aaron Rodgers, I'm not picking against him. He's winning this game. I just don't feel that way about him and this Packers team this year.
No, I don't either. You will say that, Rodgers may be affected less by playing on Christmas than most other quarterbacks. He simply doesn't care. But at the same time, Miami, they got to have this one. And they showed me a lot last week, despite losing in Buffalo. I really think that, us included, we're comfortable taking the Bills by more than a touchdown in that one. And, they came out ready to rock. And I think that this Packers secondary, they're in for a long day, especially with this one being in Miami. So, pretty neutral conditions as far as the passing game is concerned. So I feel like, the fact that Jalen Waddle kind of got back to being himself last week, I think that bodes extremely well for Miami, not just this week, but for the rest of the season. So having the double barrel action of him and Hill, that's just too much to contain for this Packers secondary from what we've seen from it.
If you do like Green Bay, the Packers are 9-1 ATS when they're a dog of 3 or more points under Matt LaFleur. So, talking the last 3 seasons here, I mean, that there is some recent trend to imply that Green Bay can hang around, but, a lot of those wins came under dramatically different situations for Green Bay when Devontae Adams was still a member of this team. I hope Green Bay wins. I think it'd be fun, if they could really make this interesting and we could potentially have Jags Titans and Packers Lions, as wild card play-in games in week 18. That's the most fun scenario. But to be honest, I came away from that Buffalo game, even though Miami lost again, I came away feeling much better about Tua, much better about that offense. I thought that was going to be, a potential smash spot for Buffalo, and really it was anything but.
Yeah, no, it really was. I didn't think that Tua would be able to throw it in those conditions. He was dropping dimes. He was sharp as hell. I thought on Saturday night, again, they played well enough to win. They just didn't, that can happen against the Bills. That's pretty forgivable. But think at home against this Packers team, I like them to hold serve and cover the spread.
And the other thing too is they were able to run the ball on Buffalo. That was not expected. And look, if you could rack up running yards against the Buffalo Bills, you could probably do it against the worst running defense by some metrics in the league in the Green Bay Packers. So that worries me as well. I mean, if this is a game where Raheem Mostert rips off like a 45-yard touchdown, that like the Green Bay I don't think they can recover from that.
I don't know if you'll find a bigger Raheem Mostert truther than me. I've been a fan of his since I was covering the Big Ten for RotoWire, my first paid gig at RotoWire. I was like, who's this guy? He's getting like 15 yards a touch, and he's like playing receiver and running back and running all these kickbacks for touchdowns. Obviously, health has been, the big kind of like, mark against him thus far in his career. But when he's healthy, that dude can absolutely play. And it was good to see him, churning it out last Saturday.
All right, John. So we both lost our best bets last week. You were on the Jets -1. That's tough. We had to lock that in. At the time, we thought Mike White was starting for the Jets. I was with you on that one. I had the Jets in a bunch of spots, and still almost won it with Zach Wilson. But that one lost. I was on the Vikings as my best bet. Vikings storm back and win that game. Just a brutal non-cover. They had a chance to cover it. It's amazing. They were down 33-0 and had a decent chance to cover that game. Came up just short though.
So during that overtime, how hard were you, or like which stage of grief were you in? Like I was in bargaining until the ball was kicked. Like I was like, no, they can't pack this in. They're going to get a first down here. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It was not fine. It was such a good drive, too. Like you're thinking, oh yeah, they might rip off a touchdown here. Like Dalvin Cook had just had that long screen pass touchdown. The Indy defense was just completely worn out at that point. And yeah, of course the drive sputters and they get the field goal. I mean, obviously you're not faulting the Vikings for taking the points there. You got to go for it on fourth down to get the cover. But I was in the bargaining phase. I was in the why me phase. I think that's one of them as well. I've been in that one quite a bit this season. It's just been one long, 16 weeks of why me. And that could very well continue tonight with this Jags-Jets game. But by virtue of us both losing the best bets, we will once again alternate the read, and I will start us off here. Kick off week 16 of the NFL season with the king of sportsbooks. Sign up at BetMGM using our promo code BETROTO. That's BETROTO. And your first wager at BetMGM is risk-free up to $1,000. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, D.C., West Virginia, Wyoming, or Ontario only. Must be 21 years or older to wager, 19 or older if you're in Ontario, eh?
Yeah, nice little benefit if you're in Ontario. This is a new customer offer only. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards are issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance, and this excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please, 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 especially on Christmas weekend, please gamble responsibly.
Please gamble responsibly. Indeed. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, D.C., Kansas, Louisiana, Nevada, Wyoming, or Virginia, 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER. In Indiana, Maryland, New Jersey, or West Virginia, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Iowa, 1-800-981-0023. In Puerto Rico, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In New York, call or text the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-9789 in Tennessee, or call 1-888-777-9696 in Mississippi.
In Ontario, if you have questions or concerns about your gambling or the gambling of someone close to you, please contact Connects Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Ohio, and Utah, as well as all other states where prohibited. Promo offers not available in Nevada and New York. All right, John, let's get back to the Week 16 slate. And, I was just kind of hoping we could maybe, kind of under the cover of night, just not talk about this game, but we have to do it. It's our obligation. Saints-Browns. Browns are 3-point favorites at BetMGM. This total, it's actually on the rise. It's up to 32.5, still the lowest total of the week, but not by as much as you think. I went and looked back on our tool on RotoWire.com, which you can check out under the NFL gambling tab. This is the lowest total since at least 2011. Kind of varies by book and where you get the line close at, but not surprising when you see a number this low. And yet, I think this is an interesting one because obviously the weather is the primary factor here. But even if this game was played in like Boca Raton in 70-degree weather, I still don't know if this is a total that sits over 40. But we're looking at a kickoff conditions of about 9 degrees with a 35% chance of snow, 28 mile per hour winds. That's not gusts. That's just like the consistent wind.
Oh man. So that's going to be a miserable experience. If you're going to that game, have your hot toddies ready. But beyond that, yeah, I feel like I like, just how you were saying, I don't believe I'm saying this, but I like the under 35 in that one game. I like the under in this one. Like this legitimately smells like 10-7. I could really see that. And maybe even 10-3. Maybe we only get one touchdown from this thing. I mean, it could be that bad. I feel like this is not going to be great conditions for Watson to be throwing in. He looked a little bit better last week. But I do feel like the Saints are, they're somewhat competent against the run. They certainly didn't show it last week against the Falcons, of course. That was a buzzkill of a non-cover from them. I really like the Saints in that spot. To miss it by a point, still reeling from it a little bit, as you can tell. But, as far as picking a side in this one, I mean, 2.5, I guess I'm on Cleveland to get it done here. But this is certainly not a game that anyone's feeling good about any particular side here. So I'm gonna go with Cleveland and the under. I'm thinking something in the 10-7, 10-3 type of range. So I feel like the under is honestly a little bit safe, as it were.
This is one where I'm wondering, it's like, is everybody expecting this to be such a gross game that somehow it ends up being like a game played in the low 20s? I don't know. I have no idea. Andy Dalton has been better than you think in cold weather throughout his career. Obviously, a lot of those games came years ago as a member of the Cincinnati Bengals. Good news for the Cleveland side. Nick Chubb was back at practice today. He had been limited all week. There was some question about his availability. Never really seemed like he wasn't going to play, but still a chance he's not at 100%. I think this one from a spread perspective, like I'm on Cleveland. Luckily, we got it at 2.5 in staff picks. At 3, I don't know, man. This is the stay away of the year potentially. I think the Saints, they hang on and they beat the Falcons last week. That was a game that they easily could have lost. They dominated for 3 quarters. If Drake London doesn't cough the ball up late in the 4th quarter, that would have gotten pretty dicey. A potential field goal at the end of that drive ties the game. A touchdown obviously wins it. So I think we come away saying like, all right, yeah, Saints took care of business. It wasn't as convincing as you'd think, but at the same time, I mean, the Browns have been anything but convincing these last few weeks. And this is not a Deshaun Watson environment to me. He has not played a lot of games in these type of conditions, and he hasn't looked good in domed conditions. He hasn't looked good in non 8-degree, 30 mile per hour wind conditions. So I don't really see this as being a great spot for Cleveland either. So I'm staying away.
Yeah, that's the responsible advice to be giving on this one. Like we just talked about gambling responsibly. Yes. This is one to maybe leave off the plate this week.
Yeah, Michigan disassociated persons, listen up. Stay away from this game. Don't even think about it.
Don't dip on down to Ohio. Don't do it. I did like your mention of Boca Raton. Did you see that I recreated the Lane Kiffin picture?
Yeah, of course I saw. Who didn't see it?
Yeah, I mean it was all over Twitter. It was exploding, but had to pay homage to the house that Lane built while I was passing through Boca Raton. Go Owls!
Yeah, you can check that out on John's Twitter at John's Tailgate. John, let's get to Giants Vikings. We've not mentioned this game yet. Obviously, Vikings coming off of the roller coaster of all roller coaster games last Saturday. Get a I wouldn't say extra rest, but more rest than the Giants have coming into this game. They, of course, played Sunday night, so the extra kind of day and a half, if you want to look at it that way, for Minnesota. They're once again playing at home. It feels like every game is at home for Minnesota. It's like 5 of their last 6, I think. Kind of a weird schedule for them. That's been a big benefit. So we're not worried about weather in this game as such. This has one of the highest totals of the week, up at 48. I'm on the Giants to cover this game. And I'm on Minnesota to win, but I think we get this is a classic 27-24 situation.
So I took the Vikings, but not strong on it. And I could definitely see myself waffling on that one by the time that we get to kick off on Saturday. I mean, the Giants are just a tough team. They're not overly talented, of course, but they showed what their vision, their theory on Sunday night. When it gets executed, it looks a little bit like what we saw in Washington. And I think that after just such a nuts game for the Vikings last week, it might be tough to just turn around, even with the little bit of extra rest, and really be sharp. I don't know if being down 33 points to Jeff Saturday was the wake-up call of all wake-up calls, or this is something where we continue to kind of question how legitimate the Vikings are. And I'm leaning towards the latter here. So, as from where I started this one to where I'm ending it, I think I've just talked myself into the G-men.
Yeah, I think Saquon Barkley looked better last week. That's a big selling point for me. Again, I thought the Giants were going to lose that game, so I'm feeling a little bit better about them now than I was a week ago. Again, I mean, Minnesota's 10-0 in one-score games, so it's like if this is a close game, if it is a 3-point game, I like Minnesota to win straight up and just keep this ridiculous run of luck going. Their point differential is +2 right now. At one point, it was -31 midway through that game last Saturday. It's just one of the more puzzling teams in recent memory. But yeah, I'm on Minnesota to win and Giants to cover. What about that total at 48?
Give me the under. If I like the Giants, I don't like it in a shootout, so I will take the under in this spot as well.
All right, we talked Bengals Pats, we talked Texans Titans, Commanders Niners. Let's get to Eagles Cowboys.
Yeah, this might be the game of the week.
It really might. There are not a ton of game of the week candidates. I think Packers Dolphins, given the implications, has to be up there. I just love watching the Bengals, so that's always like a game of the week for me. The true game of the week though might be on Thursday night, as I continue to allude to that. Eagles Cowboys. Eagles 6-point dogs at Dallas. Total sitting at 46.5 at BetMGM. We know the reason for this. My question to you is this an overcorrection? It's a simple question. It's the question that everybody's going to ask when it comes to this game. But the downgrade from Jalen Hurts to Gardner Minshew, how do you feel about this?
It's obviously a downgrade. That there's so many different threats that Jalen Hurts poses, and he's been way sharper as a passer this year. Really continues to improve in that facet of his game, but I love Gardner Minshew in these little one-off spots. I think this is like the perfect kind of tailor-made moment for him. Now the Eagles are big underdogs relative to where the spread would have been if Hurts was playing. I not only like the Eagles to cover, this feels like the Cowboys can absolutely lose this game. I do not trust them at all, really. The highs are extremely high for them, but the lows are very, very concerning, and they've been happening a little bit more frequently of late. Barely escaping against Houston, blowing it last week against Jacksonville. I think that if not for Dallas needs to be happy that Minnesota exists, because I think they'd be getting the fraud word tossed at them a little bit more than they are. So I think that the Cowboys can absolutely lose this one, and I don't think that. The shape of the offense will look a lot different with Minshew, but I think that in all, like, the offense will still be almost as effective. Really, I think that Sirianni and company really are going to have this one dialed up. I hope Minshew is wearing the cool leather jacket again. I know it's very Reddit, but I do love Gardner Minshew. I mean, we're mustache guys, so we gotta band together. I don't know if I'm cool enough to pull off aviators like he can, but beyond that, I'm in on Minshew. I'm a big Minshew guy, so. Give me the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, I'm now a former mustache guy. I
Yeah,
got
what
rid of
happened?
it. I don't know. It was just time. It was time.
Holidays.
Goes in cycles. It's like a bird like molting or like a snake shedding its skin.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of got to reset every now and then. This game is really, really tricky to be at 6. I actually love Philadelphia to cover. I think, like the first Eagles Cowboys game, that was a Cooper Rush game, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think, I think if you're a Dallas fan, you've been clinging to this belief that, like, oh, we're actually better than Philly. We didn't get a fair chance at them. We'll beat them with Dak. I think Philly's aware of that. And I think Philly's still, like, this is not just a rollover game because it's Gardner Minshew. And Gardner Minshew's not treating it that way. The big thing to me is how much do they miss Jalen Hurts on the ground? I mean, he's carried 16 or more times in 3 of the last 5 games. He's got 7 touchdowns in that span. So like taking that away from the offense is huge. Like we're not going to act like going from Hurts to Minshew is just a lateral move, because it's not. But I do think like one of the sneaky props that I've been looking into is the over on AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, who's back for this game, receptions, or if you could find targets even, because I think, you take away those 15 to 17 carries from Jalen Hurts, those aren't just going to be handed to Miles Sanders. I think, at least half of those probably become passes. So I think this could be a game where we see a little bit more of a pass-oriented offense for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they'll be able to adjust here. And, the Cowboys have a ton of injuries on defense right now. I think Dallas wins this game, but I really like Philadelphia to hang around and try to kind of make a point here that even without Jalen Hurts, we're still the better team.
Yeah, I think they're ready to prove that point. And, that's I'm very excited for that game. It is too bad that we don't get Jalen Hurts in this one, so we get the full strength Eagles. But even still, there's something Minshew can bring it. He's not a franchise guy, of course, or anything like that. But I think this is the type of spot that's tailor-made for him. I think that he keeps this one very competitive. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles go in and win outright.
Raiders at Steelers for like the 15th week in a row. It feels like the Raiders are in like another 50-50 game. It's like every team that comes up on their schedule, you're like, oh my God, I have no idea what's going to happen here. Obviously last week took the cake with how that game ended. We don't need to get into that. I've heard a lot of people talk about, like the kind of after effects of a emotional win, a crazy win like that. Is there some sort of like, kind of correction coming? You get so emotionally charged after that. I don't really want to factor that into my evaluation too much. Pittsburgh 2.5-point favorites here, by the way. 38.5 is the total. This is another game where you're going to be dealing with weather. This is a night game on Saturday, so we're looking at borderline Arctic conditions. Going to be under 10 degrees real temperature with the wind. Going to be close to zero. Steady winds of about 16 miles per hour. That's the expectation on Saturday night in Pittsburgh. To me, that dramatically plays in the Steelers' favor, but at the same time, the Raiders might have the best running back in the league right now. So, I think they're more well-equipped than they would have been in years past to handle a game like this. But with that said, at 2.5, I like the Steelers at home.
That's fair. I mean, you can come up with any number of reasons to bet against the Raiders, and you're probably not going to get a ton of pushback. But I feel like in this spot, the Steelers, I think their reputation of being like this really hard-nosed team is like a little bit overblown, at least for this year's iteration. And I feel like if we're in a situation where the Raiders are essentially getting dared to just run Josh Jacobs, I think they'll gladly take that. And I think they can absolutely move the ball on the ground against this Steelers run defense. I don't think the linebacking core is particularly strong. You're going to have to start crowding the box. If you do that, Devontae Adams still exists. So I feel like this is actually a spot where I do like the Raiders. I know those conditions are foreign to them. I am concerned about that. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. But I like the Raiders and the over in this one, because I do feel like Pittsburgh, for their own part, even if it's not pretty, I think that they can help carry the weight and get to between 17 and 23 points in this one and help us hit the over as well. So give me the Raiders and the over.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to agree to disagree on this one, but this
Fair.
will be, if we're talking, we kind of like to relate this back to like a pick'em league. Like this is my one game for sure this week. And there are a few candidates. That's saying more this week than it would in other weeks, because there are plenty of other games. Broncos Rams for sure is in that territory for me. If we're just talking straight up winners, Jags Jets, to me, that's a toss up game. But yeah, this is probably the game that I'm least confident in, because like you said, the Raiders, they have the quick strike ability on offense that Pittsburgh doesn't. And if Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh can run the ball on the Raiders, and getting Kenny Pickett back. Like, I know he hasn't been fantastic this year, but to me, that's actually a big deal, because I think Mitch Trubisky is so turnover prone that just kind of eliminating that from the equation is big. Kenny Pickett being able to scramble around, like we know he's comfortable in these conditions. So if it was Trubisky, I think I would maybe be on the other side, but getting Pickett back to me is kind of a slightly underrated storyline for Pittsburgh this week.
No, it absolutely is. Pickett, at least he plays a competent brand of football. Yeah. It's not particularly showy, flashy, what have you, but I feel I mean, it's just it's night and day between him and Trubisky at this point. So he definitely gives them a fighting chance. And, I wouldn't be shocked if the Steelers go ahead and win this one outright, but I will give the lean to the Raiders even still.
All right, we got a couple games to get to. The standalone game in the Sunday afternoon window, Broncos-Rams. This is going up against Bucks-Celtics, by the way. So if you're an NBA fan, I would maybe steer you in that direction. But the Broncos 2.5-point favorites at the LA Rams. Low total, of course, 36.5, despite this game being played indoors. Russell Wilson going to be back for the Denver Broncos. Given like the stretch that he put together immediately before the concussion, I think this is a bigger deal than maybe it would have been a few weeks ago. I was actually fairly encouraged by what we saw from Wilson, really for the first time all year. Cortland Sutton also back at practice. That's big for Denver. I mean, both of these teams are capable of losing to anybody on any week, so I certainly don't feel strongly about it. But I'm on Denver at 2.5. Yeah,
my thinking here was simply, whoever's getting points, I'll side with them. It feels okay. So, obviously the Rams had a chance to cover, at least for part of that game on Monday night. Obviously weren't able to recapture the magic from that Raiders game. But I don't know. I feel like the Rams are still kicking around, still a little bit feisty. I know that Russ is back, and yeah, like you said, the last time we saw him, he actually looked good for the first time all season. So that's certainly a concern. Jalen Ramsey looking like he's playing at a high level. Wouldn't blame him at this stage for kind of phoning it in. Doesn't look like he is still being a dog out there. So I'll take the Rams. I'm not feeling great about it, but all of a sudden, I'm in a game that should have very little watchability interest. Suddenly I'm very interested in this one because backing the Rams is just such it's so gross that it makes you feel alive. And that's what I'm chasing on Christmas, baby.
Yeah, you're going to have plenty of opportunities to chase that this week. I'll tell you that much. I think I'm totally on board with the logic of just take the team that's getting points here. I think that's fine. I'll tell you, I'm on an island in staff picks. I was the only one on Denver to cover this game. I mean, anytime you're backing Denver by yourself, that really makes you think twice. That was alarming. Yeah, right. It's once Thorne put that article up and I saw it, I was like, oh no, this could be disastrous. So, yeah, certainly not offering a strong endorsement of the Denver Broncos. We talked Bucks Cardinals. That's the Sunday night game. That brings us to Monday Night Football. Chargers Colts. Chargers 4.5-point favorites on the road here at the Joseph Adai Dome. 45.5 is our total. I will say this. I feel better about the Colts with Nick Foles than I would if they were still starting Matt Ryan.
Yeah, hell yes. Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously we were talking about the effects on Minnesota, but Indianapolis is the team that ended up losing that game, blowing that colossal, historic lead in Minnesota. So you wonder about the after effects of that. But again, they're making the switch at quarterback. I think that helps things. I think Foles, similar to Minshew, well suited to come in as a little stopgap once or twice a season. And I feel like the Chargers, I mean, as good as Justin Herbert is, I feel like the coaching staff kind of just takes the legs out from under this team. It's in so many key spots. You almost give Jeff Saturday the coaching advantage in this one, which is hilarious to say.
I'm not going that far. Look, I am not a Brendan Staley supporter. I wouldn't go that far. Let's be reasonable here.
All right. I'm trying to be, but it's getting late early here. So I probably said too much there, but at the same time, yeah, I feel like Indianapolis with more than a field goal to kick around with. I'm on Indy.
Look, the Colts have overperformed, I think, really since the firing of Frank Reich. I think they've had 2 or 3 games now. You think about that Eagles game, obviously the Raiders game in Saturday's debut. They've been frisky. And I think this defense is a little bit underrated, especially the secondary has played well. Stephon Gilmore has had a monster year. I think the Chargers had a semi letdown game on offense last week. Again, I thought they were going to be able to throw the ball all over Tennessee. They didn't. I think that comes around this week, playing in a dome again, that obviously suits Justin Herbert. Herbert 7-4 ATS in night games, if that tickles your fancy at all. So I'm on the Chargers here. I just think on the whole, when Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are available for this offense, it's a completely different beast. And that was not the case last week. I understand that against Tennessee, but I mean, the Colts, this is just an awful spot, right? Coming off of what happened last week. That's just a how do you pick yourself up type of game. So I actually feel fairly confident about the Chargers here, which, again, it is the Chargers. I know what I'm saying. I'm probably walking directly into a trap, but this is going to be a agree to disagree spot for us. John, we got about 8 minutes left here. Let's get to our parlays and the teaser of the week. I'll let you lead it off with your favorite parlay of week 16.
Okay, so this one, it's not a full afternoon delight, but I got 3 spreads to throw your way. One is the Chiefs -10. The next is Bengals -3.5. And rounding it out, Eagles +6. So those 3 all together, that'll give you a nice little +596. We love that. So we love getting almost 6-to-1 returns. That's where I'm heading as far as my parlay goes.
Okay, I like it a lot. I am going Titans money line. I'm going Bengals money line. And I'm going Detroit -2.5 at Carolina. That gets you to +361. We're not talking wild value there, but, over 3.5 to 1. We'll take that. I'm most concerned, of course, about that Detroit -2.5 on the road.
Sure. That makes sense. Again, Carolina can be tough, last week notwithstanding. And, the Lions they've been running so hot against the spread of late. You do wonder if that comes to a correction here. But, still, I like the money lines that you chose to kind of build it out. And then, of the other numbers to play around with, I feel like the Lions -2.5, even on the road. I think that you got a solid little setup there.
All right, give me your underdog parlay.
Okay, so these are 2 money lines.
Okay.
Give me Indianapolis and give me Philly.
Whoa.
Those 2, give them to me, +764.
Okay. Colts are at home. Look, I said I like the Chargers, but I'm not going to fight you too hard on that one. With one of the greatest coaches of all time, apparently, and Jeff Saturday, going up against maybe the worst coach ever, and Brandon Staley.
Yes.
And then, we talked about the Eagles. It's still a very winnable game. Like, would I say, like, absolutely lock it up, Eagles are winning? No, but I think this is going to be a much more competitive game, I think, than the line and the quarterback switch would imply. And again, getting Dallas Goedert back, that is huge. That's huge. I feel like that's going completely undercovered when discussing this game. My dog parlay, I'm involved in the Eagles as well. I'm taking their spread, though. Eagles +6, Giants +4 at Minnesota, and the Bears +8.5 at home against the Bills. That gets you to just under +600, +595 over at BetMGM.
So we love that. And, I'm in the great state of Maryland right now. I cannot wait to fire up my BetMGM app and throw all these in. Not only am I trusting myself and putting my money where my mouth is, I'm also going to be tailing one Nick Whalen this weekend. I'm very excited about it.
Dangerous thing to do. I'll tell you that, but I appreciate the support. Let's get to the teaser of the week. Last week, man, the Kansas City Chiefs of all teams let us down. We had a 6.5 pointer. We teased the Eagles down to 2.5. That was golden. We teased the Bills down to 0.5. They just had to win, and they did. And we teased, the Kansas City Chiefs from 14 down to 7.5. I thought we were building in, a ton of insurance there. I know 7.5 is not exactly your ideal teaser number, but I thought the Chiefs were winning that game by at least 10 points. Wanted to avoid the 14, and boy, that one was dead in the water. It felt like right away.
Yeah, no, it was. That was obviously, are they going to show up? Are the Texans, are they capable of playing the David to the Goliath 2 weeks in a row? Clearly they were, again, but we I don't know if we ever fully really decided where we are on the Texans for this week. But I mean that they certainly bowed up against the Chiefs, and it was fairly surprising. But no, you were on the Chiefs. Obviously, I was on the Texans, but I felt gross about it. But I mean, it worked.
I know, I'm dumb. I was on the Chiefs. I was. All right, so this week we're going with a 7-pointer plus 140. Okay. We were involving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we're going to tease down to 0.5 point. They just got to win on the road at the Cardinals. We are going to involve a pair of 7-point spreads here. So we're just kind of basically making this a win straight up. We are teasing the Baltimore Ravens down to just a pick 'em. They have to beat the Atlanta Falcons at home. And we are teasing the 49ers down to a pick 'em as well against the Washington Commanders. So again, that gets you to plus 140. Tampa has to win. The Ravens have to win. the 49ers have to win. I'm not involving any of these points that people want to talk about.
Yeah, whatever those are, I'm not interested. Just give me winners. Give me winners. You got 3 winners right there.
Yeah, I think, look, if you're looking for teasers, like maybe you want to involve the Colts, tease them up. You could get them to up like 11.5 if you want to throw them into a 7-pointer. You could tease totals as well if you're interested. Like I'm looking at maybe involving that Brown Saints total. You could tease that up to 39.5. Take the under there. Yeah.
Or feel wild and tease it down to 25 and take the under.
All right. Again, if you want to tail us, if you want to go against us, that's what I would advise. You can do that at betmgm.com, BetMGM app. Make sure you use that promo code BETROTO for that first risk-free initial bet. John, it's time. Let's lock it up. Who are you going with this week?
Minshew Mania. Eagles +6. I love it. Like you said, Goddard being back, that adds another threat there. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot more, testing that banged up secondary for Dallas. As long as they can mitigate that pass rush, feel good about it. And I feel like the Cowboys, they are absolutely on upset watch as far as the money line is concerned. But for best bet purposes, I'll just take the spread, take the points. Give me +6 on Philly.
You know what, John? I was going to go Bengals 3.5. Screw it. I'm tailing you. We're going Eagles 6. We're going with the double lock. It worked for us a couple weeks ago with the Bengals. Why not? Let's do it. It's Christmas.
All right.
We need to manifest this. Let's make it happen. Eagles +6, double lock this week.
Brothers in arms. We love it.
Love to see it. All right. That'll do it for this week. Best of luck. Again, if you're betting, do it over at betmgm.com, the BetMGM app. Please use that promo code. It's very important. BetRoto, BETROTO. Happy holidays. Enjoy the week.